So before you can honestly apologize, you have to believe a specific content in regard to your situation. Only then can you repent. That is, honestly apologize to God on the basis of the truth. It should be patently obvious to anyone of average intelligence that you can't believe just anything and everything about the God who is and expect Him to respond favorably to you. That is, you can't go to God on the basis of your belief in a lie and expect to be born again. You have to believe the truth that can be found only in what the Bible calls the gospel. 50 years ago, that truth was readily available. That's no longer the case. Today, people are circulating an absolute plethora of lies that they claim to be the gospel. That's because Satan has intentionally corrupted the gospel message so that people will not hear the truth and be born again. Most people today avoid talking about Satan, but Jesus talked about him time and time again, and the Apostle Paul warned us to beware of him. But I'll talk more about that later. After Christ was resurrected, He told His disciples to go into all the world, to preach the gospel, and to teach the same things that He taught. A bit later, He ascended into heaven with a promise that He would one day return. The return of Jesus Christ is called the second coming. Shortly before He was crucified, Jesus talked to His disciples about the events that would occur right before the second coming. At that time, He specifically warned them that true believers would need to be very careful not to believe just anything and everything that people said about Him. Listen to what Matthew tells us Jesus said. Jesus answered and said to them, "See to it that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will mislead many." On another occasion, Jesus told a parable in which He explained why it is absolutely essential that you be careful what you believe about Him. He said Satan would plant pretenders. He calls them tares in the church. Matthew says this. He presented another parable to them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed tares also among the wheat and went away. But when the wheat sprang up and bore grain, then the tares became evident also. And the slaves of the landowner came and said to him, 'Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares?' And he said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' And the slaves said to him, 'Do you want us then to go and gather them up?' But he said, 'No, lest while you are gathering up the tares you may root up the wheat also. Allow both to grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, First gather up the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them up, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" Later on, Jesus explained the meaning of that parable, and Matthew tells us what Jesus said. This is what Matthew says. "Then He left the multitudes and went into the house. And His disciples came to Him, saying, 'Explain to us the parable of the tares of the field.' And He answered and said, 'The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man, and the field is the world. And as for the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom, and the tares are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Therefore, just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth His angels, and they will gather out of His kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." What Jesus says in that parable, which is called the parable of the tares, indicates He knew there would be people who would come into the church pretending to be born again, but they wouldn't really be born again. They would just pretend to be.